So welcome to the commentary for the third musical video, 100 Boring Years of Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. In these commentaries, I've been talking about the images that appeared in the slideshows of that title, and just sort of introducing a few concepts regarding Picasso and what he was up to pretty much throughout his entire career. In this section, we're going to be dealing with skull forms, memento mori, in the painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. It's well known that in the studies, Picasso's studies for this painting, there's a supposed medical student carrying a skull. And we're going to see one of the first images was precisely this. You've got a sort of nondescript identity of a man carrying what looks like a book and holding a skull in his hand. But also there's a small dog jumping up at his leg. Now, one of the things that I've been trying to point out in these commentaries is that Picasso was deeply interested in alchemy. And it comes out in a lot of his work. And he identified with the god Mercury. And a lot of people have made references to this. It appears right through the biographies. You can find references to this. One of the things about the god Mercury was that he was the god of guard dogs. So dogs in Picasso's work are referential to the god Mercury. So Picasso is telling us that there are mercurial aspects going on in regard to this painting. And he makes references to this in the studies. So in this image, we've got this small dog clambering up the leg of the supposed medical student, which I think is a monumental myth around the painting Les Demoiselles. Most of the stories regarding things like Iberian sculptures and African masks and so on take with a pinch of salt. They are not really what's going on with this painting. And I hope to convince everybody who pays attention to these commentaries that that is the case. So there it is, a medical student with what I'm saying is an alchemical kind of symbolic reference to the god Mercury, who basically, through his agent, the Harlequin, could hide anywhere and in any form. And Picasso plays with this right through his career in all his work. So let me guide you through to the next image. Basically, it's another study from 1907 where we see Picasso's drawn a hand, again, supposedly of a medical student, holding a skull. Well, the thing is, the skull was one of Picasso's favorite motifs. He used it a great deal, and he plays with it unbelievably. It's hidden in a lot of his Cubist work. It's hidden in many, many paintings, and I'm going to kind of take the cover off that for you. So this is just another skull. Now, when we come to the next image, we see a form in the hand of the second figure in from the right in the painting Les Demoiselles. And that form I've highlighted simply by putting a mask around the surrounding area, and brought it to the surface, as it were. And what that is, I believe, is a skull. It's a distorted impression of a skull. And we're going to see the two images side by side. Here they are. So on the one hand, we've got the study, and on the other, we can see what came out of the study, I think. So just to make that a little bit more convincing, we're going to look at another skull hidden between the figures in Les Demoiselles. So this skull is a very ghostly looking thing. It's got the elements. It's partially obscured, and it's misshapen and very distorted. So it's not recognizably a skull. And Picasso employs this technique to disguise his alchemical imagery in the paintings, which is how he managed to get away with it for so long, by distorting shapes. And he has many expert techniques at concealment. So there's a rather ghostly skull. Now, inside it, if you look very carefully, there's a figure of a man holding what looks to be his arm upwards to the sky. This is again referential of the god Mercury, and I discussed that in the previous commentary. So we'll roll along. Here is an extremely ghostly skull. It can be seen lurking between the first and second figures on the left, in the negative space between them. There are two areas that look like where the eyes would be, and a very ghostly mouth. It's all very kind of haunted house kind of a skull. It's not something immediately recognizable, but if you look closely, there are two eyes, a nose, and a mouth, with the suggestion of teeth in the mouth. Okay, we're going to roll on. Here's another skull. Now, I can already imagine people saying, I've lost my marbles, but this, I'm almost certain, is representational of a skull. And if you look at the distortions that Picasso created, depictions of skulls, you'll start to understand why I'm suggesting this. There are two evident areas where eyes could be. In fact, there are three, so it could be these could be the eyes, or that also, and the aperture of the mouth, this triangular thing below. So I don't want to waste too much time on this, because I want to take you through to the full picture. So we'll roll on. In this next image, we see the four skulls side by side. And you'll notice that from the positioning, they are interspacing, as it were, the figures. Not entirely, but more or less. So right across the image of Les Demoiselles, in more or less the central register, we have these four skull suggestions, each different in appearance, each heavily concealed, but each carrying the points of identification. Now we're going to go on to another image. Now this one is another skull lurking in Les Demoiselles, very ghostly skull, which I talked about in the first part of the commentary for the second video. A very underworld appearance of the skull. Again, with all the identifiable things that one would look for in a cartoon-like depiction of a skull. A suggestion of a nose, the mouth, the jaw, the two eyes, and the brow, and the general shape of the skull. So very cartoon-like. Now I'm going to show you something that didn't appear in the slideshow, and I'm going to rather surprise you, I think. Okay, so we've flipped over one of our African friends, and right there in the lower part, the area that would normally be read as the nostril area and the mouth of this figure, we find another skull. Okay, it's very small. You'll have to have a close look with a magnifying glass or something, but you will see the suggestion of teeth and the mandible and the rest of the form in the image itself. I'm going to roll on a little bit, and I'm going to show you the distortions, another group of distortions of human skulls done by Picasso. And you can see that he really takes it to the limit. He will transform almost any kind of shape into a skull, twist it, bend it, create all kinds of humorous representations of it. It's almost like they're alive. They're laughing, they're joking. It's as if he's got a whole world of skulls. So I just wanted to see you to see that. Here's another representation of a skull. This kind of thing occurs throughout the work. But you can see what I'm getting at. Any shape, form, or size, if it's got these pointers, the eyes and the teeth and mouth area, and some suggestion of a nose and a general shape around it that could be represented, could represent the form of a skull, I think with Picasso you are looking at such an object. All right, now here's a rather surprising thing that I'm sure many people say, oh, that looks like a skull. And it really clearly does. He's more or less making it obvious with this cubist picture of a mandolin and a guitar on a table in front of a window. So there's not much more I can say about that. It's pretty basic and pretty clear. But what I will add is this is the kind of thing that Picasso is doing all the time, and you've probably not been aware of it, but if I give you a few pointers, you'll begin to understand. Another cubist item, got musical connotations, piano, keyboard, strings of a guitar perhaps, and other things, music, sheets of music, and a piano. But what are we looking at? We've got eyes here. We've got in this flower pot or whatever it is on the left, we've got an eye. And here in the hole in the guitar, we've got another eye. And if you look very carefully, there's a dog laying on top of the piano upside down on its back. But I don't want to go too far into the coded imagery, because a lot of people won't see that at the beginning. But that to me looks very much suggestive of a dog laying on top of the piano, and the other forms have been superimposed on top of it. So we'll move along. Here's a group of skulls in a sort of collage, and these are the more visible skulls, except the one in the middle. Now the one in the middle, I've just plopped that in there for a contrast with the other ones that he made clearly available for us all to see. That is the three dancers. So right in the middle of the three dancers, it's my contention, he's concealed a skull. You can see where the eyes are. The nose is clearly suggested in the bent leg, which is also a symbolic reference to Mercury, Harlequin, and you can see the aperture of the mouth, and even the suggestion of teeth in the serration of the upper part of the mouth there. The general form is in the lines of the picture. I've taken a bit of a liberty with the top part of it because, of course, it's imaginary. That line doesn't exist. But this is how Picasso works. He'll give you half or 3/4 of an image, and he leaves it up to you subliminally to make up the rest. And a lot of human beings have this ability to react to this kind of subliminal imagery, which is why certain descriptions of some of Picasso's work carry they carry a sort of flavor to them that is it reflects the subliminal imagery that he hid inside some of the more important work. So a group of skulls. Now there's one here which we haven't covered from Les Demoiselles, and this one again employs that same technique. It's only sort of half present, but you can make the rest out. The form of the skull in the white areas to the right with the eye aperture is fairly clear and easy to see. The top of the skull, the cranium, is there as well. However, the back of the skull is absent until we come back down the bottom again, and then we get the mandible, which has been suggested. And if you look very closely, the left eye is present above the pointed kneecap and slightly to the right. So we have a lot of skulls in respect to Picasso, and it's a feature that pops out time and time and time again. It's present in a subliminal form right in the middle of his most famous painting, Guernica, and many other pictures. And there are small versions, large versions, and I'll run through a couple so that you can see more of it. Now, here's another surprising one in Les Demoiselles. You would never have seen it, perhaps, hidden there, but it is there. You need to go in with a magnifying glass or something similar, and you will see that that is present. And of course, in regards to meaning, we're looking at mementi mori, and so you know, there's the mystery of death and the remembrance of death, so that they they don't end up in the bad place. So that's about it for the skull content of Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. I hope you found that useful, informative, and it threw a little light on a mysterious and very peculiar subject.